Imagine for a moment a vast, silent hall. High stone arches stretch up into the cool shadow, catching only the faintest amber gleam from a single tall window. In the center of this hall stands a massive oak table, and upon it rests a solitary blank ledger. No noise from the chaotic marketplace outside can penetrate these thick stone walls. There are no distracting voices, no endless chatter, no ceaseless tide of trivial opinions washing over the threshold. There is only the quiet air, the heavy scent of old parchment, and the weight of your own undivided attention. Now ask yourself, how often in the modern world do you inhabit such a space? Or has your mind become like an open marketplace at midday, frenzied, noisy, littered with the passing thoughts of strangers, and stripped of all quiet sanctuary? We live in an era of unprecedented noise. Every hour, millions of frantic inputs battle for a fraction of your life. Yet the individual who cannot command their own attention can command nothing else. If you do not actively guard the gates of your mind, the world will happily fill it with trash. They will trade you cheap excitement for your irreplaceable time, leaving you impoverished in spirit and drained of true intellectual power. Today we examine the law of intellectual capital, how to cultivate high-value focus in an age of deliberate distraction. We are not merely talking about managing your time. We are talking about guarding your sovereignty. Consider two stark realities. On one hand, you have the individual who reacts to every ring, ping, and passing whisper. They are perpetually busy, perpetually exhausted, yet at the end of the decade, they have built nothing of lasting value. On the other hand, you have the individual who understands the architecture of deep concentration. They isolate themselves from the trivial, invest their mental capital into deep study, and build works that survive long after the noise has quieted down. One is a spectator in their own life, the other is an architect. Which will you be? The law of selective ignorance, number one. You must learn the discipline of selective ignorance. To build elite cognitive depth, you must become unapologetically ruthless about what you allow into your consciousness. Most men and women consume whatever happens to cross their path: morning headlines, casual gossip, unending streams of useless trivia. They treat their minds like an open dumping ground and then wonder why they lack clarity and conviction. I once knew a man named Edward. Edward was a man of extraordinary native talent. He possessed a sharp mind, a keen quickness of speech, and a deep desire to accomplish great things in his chosen field of commerce. But Edward had a fatal vulnerability. He was obsessed with keeping up with everything. He read every morning newspaper from cover to cover. He listened to every commentator on his commute. He knew every passing political scandal, every athletic score, every piece of idle friction occurring across the globe. One evening, as we sat near the fire after a seminar, Edward looked at me with weary eyes and asked, "Why do I feel so exhausted yet so stagnant? I work all day, I absorb everything, yet I am making no real progress on my life's primary objectives." I looked at him and said, "Edward, you are starving your purpose while feeding your distractions. You are trading your high-value focus for cheap information that has zero bearing on your destiny. You know everything about what thousands of strangers are doing, but you know nothing about where your own vessel is drifting." Edward was letting the world write his internal agenda. He was rich in trivial knowledge, but bankrupt in focused execution. Ask yourself right now, what fraction of the information you consumed this week actually contributed to your character, your enterprise, or your soul? What percentage was merely noise designed to keep you reactive? If you want to build high-value focus, you must intentionally close doors. You must decide that certain things are simply beneath your attention. You do not need to have an opinion on every current debate. You do not need to follow every passing panic. The man who knows a few fundamental truths deeply will always outperform the man who knows 1,000 trivial details superficially. The architecture of the mental sanctuary next, you must construct an impenetrable inner sanctuary. Focus is not a magical state that simply descends upon you when you feel inspired. Focus is an engineered environment. It is the deliberate elimination of friction between your intention and your action. Consider the contrast between the novice and the master. The novice attempts to focus in the middle of chaos, relying purely on willpower. They leave their notifications open, their doors unlatched, their desks cluttered with unfinished business, and then they wonder why their attention fractures after 10 minutes. Willpower is a finite battery. If you spend it fighting your environment, you will have nothing left for deep creation. The master, however, creates a sanctuary. They build rigid boundaries around their prime working hours. They treat their time of focus as a sacred ritual, unapproachable by the trivial demands of the world. When you enter your space of high-value focus, the world must cease to exist. The phone is placed in another room. The digital doors are bolted. The environment is stripped down to its bare essentials, just you, your tools, and the monumental task before you. If you cannot give 2 uninterrupted hours to a worthy goal without checking for external validation, you are not a free individual. You are a captive to your own impulses. How often do you step into a room, shut out the entire world, and wrestle with a single complex problem until it yields? If the answer is rarely, then you are leaving your greatest potential entirely untouched. The principle of deep compounding number 3, understand the law of deep compounding. In the world of finance, compound interest is described as the 8th wonder of the world. Money invested wisely doubles, compounds, and yields massive returns over time. But few understand that mental focus operates under the exact same immutable law. 1 hour of divided, distracted work does not equal 15 minutes of intense focus. In fact, shallow work yields almost 0 compound value. When you switch your attention back and forth between tasks every few minutes, your brain leaves fragments of its capacity behind on every distraction, a state psychologists call attention residue. You are left operating at a fraction of your potential. I once knew a young woman named Sarah who owned a struggling publishing firm. She was working 14 hours a day, constantly responding to emails, attending minor meetings, and managing minor fires. She was proud of her hustle, yet her business was teetering on the edge of insolvency because the core product, the quality of their strategic manuscripts, was declining. I asked her a simple binary question. Are you being busy or are you being productive? She paused, visibly taken aback. I am working every waking hour, she insisted. Yes, I replied. But are you doing the one thing that actually moves the needle, or are you taking refuge in the comfort of low-value tasks? We restructured her daily discipline. We instituted 3 hours of untouchable, deep-focused work every single morning before she opened a single communication channel or spoke to a single client. In those 3 uninterrupted hours, she was required to engage only in high-leverage strategic writing and deal structuring. Within 6 months, the quality of her output doubled. Within 2 years, her enterprise had tripled its revenue. She didn't work more hours. She simply changed the depth of her focus. She stopped scattering her mental capital into tiny droplets and turned it into a concentrated high-pressure beam. Deep focus compounds over time. When you dedicate disciplined blocks of time to mastering difficult skills, studying profound principles, or constructing complex systems, you build an intellectual moat that no distracted competitor can ever cross. Socratic self-audit, the currency of attention. Let us pause and conduct a quiet audit of your current trajectory. Ask yourself these 4 questions and demand honest answers from your soul if your daily focus were converted into physical currency. Are you investing it in permanent assets or spending it on disposable entertainment? When was the last time you sat in complete silence for 60 minutes with only a notepad, wrestling with your strategic vision? What is the one low-value habit that, if eliminated today, would immediately liberate 20% of your mental energy? Are you controlling your technology, or is your technology silently dictating the rhythm of your day? Look at these answers clearly. Do not make excuses. Do not blame the modern, fast-paced world. The world has always been noisy. The burden of discipline has always rested on the shoulders of the individual. If you find that your attention has been compromised, do not despair. A sanctuary can be rebuilt. A mind can be retrained. But the restructuring must begin today through deliberate choice and unyielding practice. The master strategy for intellectual sovereignty, finally, to master the law of intellectual capital, you must institute a daily protocol of cognitive sovereignty. First, establish your unreachable hours. Pick a window of time every day, preferably early, before the world demands your attention where you are entirely off the grid. No inputs, no messages, no media. Use this time exclusively for high-value creation, deep reading, or rigorous planning. Second, practice the rule of essential inputs. Treat what enters your mind with the same reverence you treat what enters your body. If you would not eat garbage, do not feed your mind garbage. Read books that have survived decades or centuries rather than articles written 30 minutes ago for clicks. Study foundational principles rather than ephemeral trends. Third, embrace the discomfort of quietness. When you find yourself waiting in line, sitting in traffic, or resting between tasks, resist the twitch to reach for immediate stimulation. Allow your mind to settle. Allow the mud to sink to the bottom so the water becomes clear once again. It is in those quiet pauses that high-value ideas are born. I once knew an old scholar who lived in a small timber house surrounded by oak trees. He had no television, no blaring radios, and kept his modern devices locked in a wooden chest until a specific hour in the afternoon. When I asked him if he felt isolated from the world, he looked at me with profound serenity and said, "Jim, the man who lives in the eye of the storm is not isolated. He is the only one who can actually see clearly where the wind is blowing." Build your sanctuary. Guard your focus. Treat your attention as the precious, irreplaceable capital that it is. When you master your mind, you master your destiny.